In the early 2000s, a woman named Jan Thompson became the first person to come forward publicly about the massacre of the LBL. Her testimony was critiqued by many, often written off as an internet creepypasta, but it would cement the saga of the LBL massacre in the public consciousness. No one has ever proven or disproven Jan's story. Later, much later, a man calling himself Roger would come forward and claim to be a survivor of the event in question. He would give an interview wherein he refuted several details often told online and would share details concerning the family allegedly killed in the attack, including their names. We did our best to investigate Roger's story, using information available publicly online at the time, but were unable to verify the existence of the family in question. All that was left was to talk to Roger himself.
Speaking of that, how about the LBL massacre story? Thoughts and opinions on that?
We thought it was an internet invention.
We've evolved on this a lot.
Yeah,
we're still evolving on it because we keep uncovering things. And like when you go out on the ground and actually look at the purported side of this, you're like, this doesn't make sense. But there's been a lot of evidence that some of this could be true. But I think the more that we're out there and the more little things we discover here and there, I think we kind of start to get a clearer picture of what happened.
Back in 82?
Yeah, 1982. Probably beginning of the season of 1982, beginning of the season when everybody would come in to start camping.
Yeah, they said early spring, late winter. A family of 4 brought their RV in here with the first people in the campground, began to set up. It was a husband, wife, son, and daughter. And apparently, shortly after they arrived, while they were setting up to go camping, they were attacked by the beast of LBL. The way the story got out into the wild is that 2 police officers told a lady who worked at a gas station, a local gas station, what they had experienced that night. They showed up, she was working the midnight shift, they were extremely shaken. One was nauseated by what he had witnessed. She had kind of gotten to know them over the few years just by serving them on the night shift, and they just proceeded to tell her the story about how they showed up on the scene of an attack and then just finding the family just basically massacred in this area.
So at that point, she received secondhand information, not a first-hand witness account. She typed it up, and it's written in very. There's a narrative to the language of it, which sometimes is a red flag for people that she was trying her hand at being a novelist. You know.
It reads like a horror story.
It reads like
very descriptive language. So there's some stories say that soldiers from the nearby fort showed up, did a hunt, shut this area down, and then just killed it, and then took the beast out. So
that's why these are also referred to as bunkers. They said that some of the soldiers may have used them as cover to hide from the beast of LBL while they were out here trying to eradicate them after the incident.
nobody's ever talked about that. We just happened to discover that it was a hollow thump underneath there, but it sounds like it's maybe sheet metal with dirt on top of it, but there's some sort of void or space underneath this that nobody's ever spoken about before, so there you go.
Probably a concrete floor and then a void underneath.
Yeah, I see it.
Sounds metal, doesn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like wood now, does it?
But what's weird is that of all the lore you hear about this place, because you hear about the bunkers constantly, and people have like pet theories, like I mentioned earlier. Either this was used to contain the beast of LBL, or it's where the
people would hide out
while they were hunting the beast of LBL. Because after the '82 attack, supposedly they brought the military in to hunt this thing down and to kill it. So, and this was one of the things, is that the soldiers would take shelter here in between the hunts so that it couldn't like ambush them while they were asleep.
Yeah.
So all this entire area has so much like folklore built up around it, but nobody's ever mentioned, well, it's hollow underneath there too, because that would be part of like the evolving kind of like folklore. Now there are rumors of underground tunnels through here.
There's a lot of rumors about that.
A lot of rumors. We found
the entrances to, I think it was originally meant to be a network for moving water from one place to another, but it's underneath a shack up in the center part of the peninsula where there's an entrance to a tunnel, and there's like an underground room underneath the shack, and then there's tunnels out there too. So I don't know if something is using these tunnels to move from place to place, just repurposing the tunnels to move from place to place, or if it was purpose built for something else. But I think it's a place where they were moving water from one place to another, but now it's being repurposed because at the entrance to one of these tunnels, we found a pile of bones. And it's down really far. If it was like a coyote going in there and taking prey, to eat it, it couldn't get out of there. But it looks like something was jumping down into this hole and taking something down there and eating it because there's just piles of bones down there. And when we returned to the area, a couple days later, the bones were all gone. Like everything was gone that we filmed and we put out there. Everything was gone. We found tons of bones up there, and then all of a sudden the whole place is just swept clean after we put out a video showing that.
And it's weird because we went to that area because there was a guy that worked one of the barges on the lake. So he was like, hey, we're seeing these big black figures on the shoreline. And he's like, I tried to talk to him about the captain of the barge. And he's like, oh, they're just bears, don't worry about it. And I'm like, all right, what do you think they are? And he goes, oh, it's the beast of LBL, man. It's like, the beasts.
You mentioned hearing about the story of the family that was killed. Do you recall what year or around about what year you first heard about it?
It's common, it's either late 70s, early 80s. I've always heard the early 80s. Now with the invention of YouTube and all the reports.
Do you remember when you first learned about it, or when
it would have been 1989.
89.
Yep.
Of course, we've heard the story about the massacre that is supposed to have occurred in 1982.
Right.
Curious, just any thoughts or insight that you
I've got mixed feelings on that. I would like to see a little proof. Of course, if a government covered it up like they say they did, there probably won't be any proof. But I'd like to see death certificates. They say there were 6 coroners there on site investigating this, this attack. And surely somebody has got reports somewhere. These people are buried somewhere. They've got to be, these bodies got to be interred somewhere, so where's the death records at that has the information on it,
As for the attack itself, I do believe that it happened in one way or another. Now, I've received comments before from people that attended school in Kentuckiana that in May of 1982, there was stories circulating around their school that a werewolf-like creature or somebody dressed like a werewolf had killed a family camping up in Land Between the Lakes. And they said that by Derby Day, the story had made it to Louisville. And there's a lot of former cops that have came out that have said, yes, something did absolutely happen up there.
My big thing is that so they had a fairly brand new RV campground, not cheap to build, It's on the northern end, which is visited pretty regularly, that if they had come in and wrecked it, you'd find news stories on it. You'd find something on there. People would be talking about it. We always talk about the fact that we try to investigate irrational topics as rationally as possible. Try to look at the real world consequences of what people talk about. But it still just didn't make sense until we found a closed down campground on the southern end of the peninsula. There's a series of closed roads down there that we went in on foot.
This is another example of some of the ruins that are here, and we think this is possibly the remnants of what was a bathhouse, where they would have bathrooms, showers, and you would have that in a nice campground. You have that in campgrounds right now, but this is basically all that's left of this right now. We have found piping over here sticking out of it, and we found a cut-off power pole right by it over here.
And you can find where there was once an extremely just beautiful campground.
It was basically the jewel of the LBL. It was one of they had opened it earlier, they redid the whole thing, and it was a gorgeous campground. It had recreation facilities, it had a place where you could buy supplies, you could buy ice and snacks and drinks, and it had RV sites with this beautiful little creek going between them. And it was a highly developed, they had a boat ramp down there, but it was a highly developed camp area.
And they shut it down temporarily in 1982.
Yeah.
For reopening.
They were going to shut it down for just temporarily, and they kept pushing back the reopening. Now, they had just redone a lot of the stuff years prior to this. So we had dug through old newspaper articles, microfiche, and found where they're talking about them shutting down these campgrounds. And then they keep pushing back reopening it. I think that there was some kind of danger in that area. Something happened, an incident happened, and they didn't know what else to do but to shut that down. Now, this is on the southern end. This is below Golden Pond. This is south of Golden Pond. So it's awful strange. It was right around the exact same time as the 1982 massacre that this got shut down. So it's almost like they're quarantining different areas of the peninsula. And it cost them a lot of money to do that.
And that was my thing, but that kind of took away that uncertainty, the question I had about the north end, around the Massacre site. How could somebody do this and they just do it and get away with it and the public wasn't aware of it? Well, then we found they did that on the southern end. It was a temporary closure. They just kept pushing that temporary closure back and back. People basically eventually forgot that it was there. Then they went in and wrecked the place. Back in '82, it's an early spring, late winter. A family of 4 brought their RV in here, husband, wife, son, and daughter. And apparently, shortly after they arrived, while they were setting up to go camping, they were attacked by the beast of LBL.
Well, it's a supernatural hotspot up here. Well, one thing in particular, you find a lot of tents ripped open and missing over here.
And it's just like Kentucky, a dark and bloody ground at this point. The bitterness has soaked into the land.
Just ride along and I look out the window and this creature was in a stance like it was gonna pounce, like a cat would run.
I was totally incapacitated by these creatures at one point, and it was feeding off of my fear. And I felt like the more fear that it was getting from me, it was like it was gaining more power.
And I'm scanning with this new thermal imager, and I pick up like an extremely strong heat signature.